welcome back to my channel. My name is Jenny, and I am here to talk you through my shelves again. I decided today to pick out some books by women that I admire in one way or another, and I'm going to talk you through them now. I have to say it's getting a little complicated to do this project because I have written a list of the books that I have talked about, but I haven't kept my bookshelf organized in the same manner, and so now when I'm going through my bookshelf, I'm getting confused as to which books I talked about already, and the list is getting very long. So I don't know, I might have to come up with a better system to keep track of this, but for now, hopefully I'm not talking you through a book that I've already talked you through. Okay, so I'm starting with Daybook, The Journal of an Artist by Truitt. This is a, like it says, Diary of an Artist. And Truitt was a 20th century artist. I don't remember what year she passed away, but she kept this really interesting diary of her time in the studio, her time with her children, and it's really quite inspiring. It has a lot of wonderful observations about making art, about living a life, about raising children, about being an independent person and surviving off of your art. So a lot of really interesting tidbits in this one. The next woman I admire is this author, Tanya Talaga. This is Seven Fallen Feathers, Racism, Death, and Hard Truths in a Northern City. I actually did a full review of this book, so I will link that down below. This is a nonfiction book about a very particular issue that was happening to Indigenous people in Thunder Bay, Ontario, Canada. Because of the nature of education for Indigenous peoples, often they live in very rural parts of Canada. They are then transported to larger towns or cities in order to further their education. And that is actually a very isolating and very often lethal reality for a lot of these teenagers who are away from their families for the first time. They've never been outside of their communities for extended periods, and so there's also a lot of racism and stereotyping that goes on in these types of cities towards First Nations people. And so what ends up happening is there are people who fall through cracks in the systems, and this particularly talks about seven youth who died under very suspicious circumstances in Ontario. And so it's a wonderful book. It investigates, I think, from a very well-rounded perspective. So I really admire Tanya Talaga's writing. This is Now Louison by Fremont, and this is translated from the French by Swanson. So this is a little, you can tell it's a tiny little book, but it is a portrait of Louise Bourgeois, the very wonderful artist Louise Bourgeois. And I believe it's written in a kind of playful text where he's kind of talking to Louise. So I haven't read this one yet. I purchased it a while ago, and I think the cover is fantastic with the spider web, and then you have a spider on the back. In case you're not familiar with Louise Bourgeois' work, she made these huge spider sculptures. There's several all around the world, and so I think that's what the spider web is referring to. So hope to get to this pretty soon. It is actually considered fiction, so it's very much playing with genre, I think, and taking a real person, but creating this kind of increasing her myth. She has a very mythological, larger-than-life presence in the art world, and so this book is kind of playing with that, I think. Next, I have two books to talk about. They're the two books by Alice Munro that I own. The first one is The Moons of Jupiter, which is a collection of short stories. This is actually this one is not interconnected. I was mixing it up with one I got from the library. So these are not interconnected short stories, but from what I remember, I really enjoyed reading these. And, you know, Alice Munro is kind of that quintessential Canadian short story writer. That's her thing. That's what she wrote. And I think I kind of admire the level of fame that she achieved based on being a short story writer, because I feel like novelists get all the credit in the literature world, and short story writers are never usually as famous as novelists tend to be. So Alice Munro is a big name. And then this is called The View from Castle Rock, and this is actually, I think it's a memoir. She's talking about her own family in this one. So in recent years, she became interested in the history of her Laidlaw ancestors. Starting in the hills of the Scottish border, she learned a great deal about a famous ancestor born there around 1700, and she then traced the family's history with the help of that man's nephew, the author James Hogg, finding to her delight that each generation had produced a writer who recorded what had befallen him. And so in this way, she was able to follow the family's voyage to Canada in 1818 and their hard times as pioneers. So this book traces the generations until it gets to Robert Laidlaw, who was Alice's father. So I found that, you know, the lineage idea, the ancestry, very interesting. As a settler myself, I'm very interested in my own stories of immigration, my own family stories. So this just really appealed to me, and it's going to be interesting to read another format from Alice Munro rather than short stories. Moving on to another Canadian writer that I admire, Marion Engel. So Marion Engel wrote the quite infamous book Bear, which I read 3 summers ago, and loved. I thought it was so amazing. And so Marion Engel didn't have a very long career. I don't believe she didn't write that many books. So I think there's probably 5 or 6 novels in total that she's written. And so I found this one at a secondhand bookshop, I think, and picked it up, the Honeyman Festival. So it chronicles one night in the life of Min Burge, a former starlet, now nearer 40 than 30, with 3 children and pregnant with a 4th. Her journalist husband away on assignment, Min vaguely prepares for a party given in honor of Honeyman, a movie director who was once her lover in Paris. So all the things about this sound really good to me. I like that one, you know, a novel just in a snippet of time, a tiny snippet. And so I'm really excited to read more of Marion Engel's work. Continuing on the short story vein, this is The Dark Dark by Samantha Hunt, and this is the only collection of short stories that I have ever given 5 stars to. I liked every single short story in this book. And I can't say enough about this. It's, I guess you would classify it as magical realism, or maybe speculative fiction. I'm not sure what the difference is between those, but there's a lot of both in here. So if you don't like those things, then you probably won't like this, but it was right up my alley. I just enjoyed every story. And every story gave me something different to think about, or a song mentioned that like sparked my interest, or visually, her writing is very visual. So for me, I love it when writers create pictures for me in my head, like vivid imagery, and she's excellent at that. So I really love this book. Another 2, Maya Angelou. So Maya Angelou wrote, obviously, very famously, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, which was her first memoir chronicling her life. And so this is the next one for sure, Gather Together in My Name. And I bought these books in the 1990s, I believe. But I never read the first one. So I listened to I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings 3 years ago. And I really enjoyed it. You know, listening to it was lovely and hypnotic. But I knew that I had owned these books. So when I was home in the summertime, I saw that this one was on my pile of books that need to be shipped out to me scenario. And so I thought, I'm just going to take this one back with me in my suitcase so that I can read it sooner rather than later. And then, so I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, Gather Together in My Name, and then The Heart of a Woman. I think that's the order. I've never really looked it up. See, no, I guess it's not. So these are under the autobiography selection under her books. And then there's Singing and Swinging and Getting Merry Like Christmas and All God's Children Need Traveling Shoes. So I'm not even sure where this follows. And I'm not sure if it matters if you read these in a linear way. But I did want to, since I knew I had the second one, I wanted to read the second one before I started going out of order. And I don't know, maybe I'll just read these two and then I won't read anymore. But she did have a very fascinating life, so I am really interested to learn more about her life. Another two. I'm just doing lots of pairs today. These are, I would say, I don't think these are middle grade. I would say these are young adult. And they're not graphic novels, but they do have illustrations. So illustrated novels. Those Who Run in the Sky and Those Who Dwell Below by Aviaq Johnston. Aviaq Johnston is a writer who is from Nunavut, which is the newest and territory in Canada. So I believe it's north of Ontario and Quebec. And so this is an Inuit community that she grew up in. And these books follow Peturnik, who is a young coming-of-age shaman in his community. And so in the first book, you follow him as he's going through the kind of transformation from being just a member of the community to a shaman. So he goes into the spirit world and journeys there and goes through trials and tribulations. And in the second book, he is going on a mission, on a shamanic mission to help another community. And so you follow his story more. And so as far as I know, I believe this one came out in 2019. And as far as I could tell by a little bit of internet research, I don't know if there's another one coming, but they very much, the ending of the second one very much made my son and I, Elliot, who we read these together, feel that there was going to be another one. So we're waiting with bated breath for the next in the series, because they're really good. If you want to learn about Inuit culture, if you want to learn about, anything to do with Inuit and how, the way they think, the way their village is structured, these books are perfect. It's a great story, and it also educates you about Inuit life. So highly recommend these. Okay, this book is actually, this is one of the few books that suffered from me having young children a long time ago. So this was given to me as a gift. This is the Diary of Frida Kahlo, an intimate self-portrait with an introduction by Carlos Fuentes. And this is not a book with a lot of reading in it. So you have the introduction, and then you have, it's basically a copy of Frida Kahlo's diary. So they took it and they made it into a book. And so you have beautiful images and lovely, splattered pages with her writing. And I can't read Spanish, so I don't know what it says. But visually, they also have like a description in the back, so you can go through and kind of read, actually they do have a translation back here as well, so you can kind of read what she wrote in English in the back. And I'm going to insert a little picture here of what the cover looks like, because my 3-year-old got this book in his hands one day and ripped it to shreds. So I don't have the cover anymore, or the dust jacket, sorry. But yeah, a lovely visual diary. All right. Little Women by Louisa May Alcott. One of my top 10 novels of all time. This copy was from my grandmother. I think she wrote in it. Didn't she write in it? I feel like she did. Yes. She didn't write the year that she gave this to me, but I would say it was in the 1990s if I had to guess. So I've read this book twice, I think, and I love it. I love the whole story. I love the movies. I love, yeah, it's one of my favorites. So I would like to read more about Louisa May Alcott. I have read all the books in this series, so Joe's Boys and the other one, which I can't recall right now, but you know, they are characters that I will love for my whole life, so I'm happy to spend time with them. Little Women is obviously the best. And this is the combination of Little Women and Good Wives. It's kind of confusing, but those two books are this book together, this whole book. So yeah. And finally, I have another duo, and these are the only solid books that I own of Alice Walker's writing. I also own In Search of Our Mother's Garden, which is a collection of prose and essays by Alice Walker. So I have The Color Purple, and I have The Same River Twice, Honoring the Difficult by Alice Walker. Alice Walker is definitely one of my favorite authors and personas. I find her presence so grounded. I think she has lived her life fearlessly. She is a wonderful poet. She writes great novels, and her nonfiction is also good. So all of the things. I just admire her greatly. The way she's chosen to, the way she lives and the way she has moved through the world is just something I greatly admire. So, and I loved The Color Purple. I've read this once, and then I've obviously seen the movie once or twice. And I picked this up. This was at a little free library, and I thought, you know, I should definitely just have a copy of this, because I definitely will want to reread this again someday. So it's just nice to have a physical copy of it. All right, so those are the books I'm going to talk to you about today. They're on my shelves. I will be back again soon with another video. Thank you so much for watching.